I used to live life in a very carefree way. I mean, I quote the passage from the epistles of Paul a lot, because I think it's really relevant, given that I'm in this kind of transitional stage in my life from childhood to adulthood. When I was a child, I practiced the things of a child. As I became an adult, I put away childish things. And I mean, it was more than the, practice of things of a child. I played as a child. I worked as a child. I thought as a child. As I got older, as I became an adult, I put away childish things. But I wonder, have I put away too many childish things? I wonder, is the carefree way I used to live good? Is the way I live now as good as it could be? When I see other people do things in the day-to-day, I think they live in a very carefree way. I think they just take things with a grain of salt, take them as they see them, and that's that. That's all there is to it. They live in this kind of what I call like a social groove. There's a state of affairs present in their world, and they accept it. And that's what there is. They live within it, and they're okay with that. That's the guy who graduates from a business school, gets a consulting management position at Deloitte, and gets a wife, and that's what he does with his life. He rises through the ranks of the business, and then dies. That's what he did. He made money for his family. He raised a kid. That's all there was. That's the social groove. 100 years ago, if you were in a city, it probably would have been about the same thing, but maybe you would have gone into sales more likely. Maybe you would have become a journalist. You would have just done something that was expected. And today, still, that is what most people do, because that's the state of affairs. That's the groove. That's the fitting in. That's the interlocking. It's like, tracks on a train. Society is the track, you are the train. You are moving along by means of what has been provided for you in the die cast of the metal. And I used to think that way. I used to live that way. And I wish I still could. I hate that phrase, because it says something implicit, which is that I have broken out of something, and I don't like that. It's not to say that the way I think is better in any other way than it was before. I think in some ways it's worse, or that I see things other people don't see. Nothing like that. It's just that is one way of thinking, and it seems to me now that I recognize that I think in a different way. And that way is not acceptance. Where the mentality of the social groove entails acceptance, it entails a rigidity of being. It entails a certain lack of movement. Because, like the train track analogy, you fit into a groove. You fit into a particular, if the track twists and turns, you twist and turn with it. You act within the social boundaries. And you just do those things because you see them as immediate, you see them as proper, and you see them as solid. They are not movable. They are as they are, and you have a place within them. Now, my mentality is quite the opposite. The social groove is not solid, it is liquid. It, like all things, fades away into thin air. I particularly got this sense and this idea as I was reading Ecclesiastes, where, about the same thing is said, all is vanity. All is nothingness. The Hebrew word that's used in the phrases there is hebel, which means hot air. It's all vapor. It will all pass away. And now the writer of Ecclesiastes ultimately comes to the conclusion that you gotta ignore that. You just gotta fit into your social groove, and you will find happiness in that way. Do your work, eat good food when you want to, drink when you want to. If you're a man, find good women, find a wife, and if you're a woman, do the same with men, of course. And just do it. Just accept things as they are. But I gotta say, as I've read more and as I've seen more, it has become increasingly difficult to do that. Because, on the one hand, not only do you see that some people are going through struggles today that people as old as time itself have gone through, that those struggles are forever. There are some things which people take for granted which are recent, which are incredibly recent. Entirely recent. Feeling entirely isolated because you can't maybe talk to somebody about something that they saw, or a movie or a song or something. That's a recent condition. And I see people that have that condition. At the same time, working for a business, having a job, that's a recent condition. It's a condition that didn't exist 600 years ago. And for the entirety of humanity there prior, it didn't exist. Of course, there are good things that exist now too, but there are a lot of things that we take for granted. Social relations, the supremacy of pair bonding, the security of the state, healthcare, roads, cars, transportation. Perhaps everybody knows that these things didn't exist not but 300, 400 years ago. But what I can't understand is if you realize that, how are you okay with it? How are you okay with doing things that will ultimately come to nothing? I mean, all of these things are just entirely liquid. Like I said before, they've seemed to come together as though a coalescing of the hot air of prior, of the vapor, and they've become something that we can swim within, we can move within, but we can flow freely about them. We could at one point do something with one particular business, and then maybe we could at one point do something with the government, and maybe we could do something on our own, start our own business. There is no one direction. There is no rigidity of place and of movement and of time, but an infinite potentiality all the time. And for me, the issue with that is that what do? I don't see a particular groove. There's a certain comfort, I think, in just working with a company and taking on that as the groove which I fit myself into. Because I know people have done before. It's a tried and true way to live your life. You work somewhere, you make your money with a wife, you have a child, and you die. That's it. And yet when I know there's so many other things to do, so many other ways things can be, so many other ways I can be, there's something to that comfort which is intrinsically undermined. As though I've limited all of that potential, and I've limited all that could have been. And so it feels as though to make that choice, to do something like that, is wrong. And as a consequence of that, as a consequence of the awareness of all of this potentiality that I speak of, it's so difficult to be carefree about things. Because if you find your groove, if you find and you accept and you live in that groove, you know that as a part of that groove, there's going to be times to be carefree. There's going to be times to just do what you want. Because you know you're in a groove. You know that there's going to be such and such. You know there's going to be a job, or you know that there's going to be a person for you, or you know that there's going to be an outcome for you. There is a fixture to things. And so you don't have to think about everything, because there's a way things are going to be, and those things are assumed. When you don't live that way, and everything remains possible, taking any action, doing anything, comes with an insurmountable amount of analysis and of questioning and of thoughts. Because you don't see the clear outcome. You only see potentiality. And you see a multitude of means to that potentiality. Yet nothing comes in any way concrete. Because it's all liquid. It's all just water you're wading through. Even now, as I sit here and I speak, I'm doing something, but I'll be done with it. I gotta move on to the next thing. Tomorrow morning, I'll be doing the next thing. I'll practice the piano again. I'll exercise again. I'll read again. I'll do many different things. And I'll fix myself to none of them because I'm merely moving through water. At one point in the groove of academia, at one point in the groove of music, at one point in the groove of a YouTuber, now in the groove of a podcaster. I do all of these things, and yet I'm too afraid to pick any one of them. When I go back to college, I'll be in the groove of a businessman. I'll be in the groove of somebody who may have a degree in banking. I'll be in the groove of a college student who has to talk to people. And yet I will be in none of these grooves, because they will all be temporary pieces of... No, they'll be temporary drops in an ocean. Tracks I will affix myself to and then remove myself from, because they're not really grooves for me. For other people, they are. All part of their, bigger life groove, which I don't feel. I'd like to feel that way again, but I know as soon as I do, I will have limited potentiality. I will have made something actual, and I will have picked up something. And I wish I could be okay with that right now. Maybe I will be at some point. I don't know. It's just tough. It's just tough.